We're going.
We're on.
Perhaps do you want to open this up? I know you've been meaning to get Jami on for a while, and we've finally captured him.
It's been pretty easy.
Yeah, almost escaped.
Yeah.
It was close.
I only had to travel to his gym like 2 years ago. It's only like 24 hours away. It's convenient. And then on the other side of the world, I'd fucking tracked him down 2 years later.
The training plan has come a long way since. A long way.
Yeah, in the last few years, there's been quite a lot of growth, both in thinking and numbers.
Can you explain? Well, I mean, when people look at it on the surface, and we've been through it, it looks very hard. Also, it's very like reading it is like deciphering like hieroglyphics. So explain to people why it's not 21:15:9, just this workout, and there's like so much depth to it. And you know, as we saw the evolutions of it, like more videos and explaining things and adding in the different layers. Like, why do you feel like that stuff's important?
So I think you can get really far with 21:15:9. I think there is 21:15:9 there as well, 15:12:9, all these things. Some more what looks like classic, what you'd say CrossFit workouts. But for me, for a long time, the idea was, can we bring ideas from the outside into the way that we train and incorporate them into the classic model of preparing CrossFit athletes? And it's really been an exploration for myself, asking questions, getting better at asking questions, coming up with better models and systems of how to think about training as a professional athlete rather than just showing up and doing some exercise. So it kind of grew from there. It has grown in complexity, but also I think it has become more simple. Even though I appreciate that some of the write-up, the how to follow the program that's there, might seem complicated first.
Right. And for people who don't know, you actually own a gym. And so, which means that you have experience with general populations.
Yeah.
What is it that's pulled you more towards, or why have you pulled more towards the training plan, which serves as, I mean, I could be wrong when I say this, but it serves more the advanced athlete, someone who's been in CrossFit for a while, versus, you know, staying with the roots of, you know, helping someone who walks in, like, lose 5 kilos that's never exercised before.
Yeah, right. So I was a competitive athlete most of my life in judo. I competed at the regionals 2009. Didn't quite make the games, but compete against Mikko.
Nice.
The same year that he won. So for me, the competition was always the thing. I am interested in general fitness, but I'm really interested in the 1% of people who really want to be the best they can be. And in this field, of course, the people who come in, oftentimes they are very competitive in other different ways and want to be better in different ways. But I was always interested in helping people to become the best they can be. So competitive fitness was kind of the natural route for me to take. And then it was really about taking some key decisions on the way that allowed me to get to where I am now. 2010, I was contacted by Mikko because we competed together. We were both Finnish. I was studying osteopathy. I was just about to graduate. So he asked me if I could come and help him as a manual therapist at the regionals. Okay. Made a big decision to go there. Had to do a 4-hour exam in 1 hour, get the special permission, almost missed my flights, could barely afford it. There was this kind of whole backstory of how I ended up going there, but it just felt like it was the right decision to take. Then I met Annie there and offered to help, and kind of the rest is history in a sense. Yeah. It started to just flow organically from there. So it was kind of selected and then kind of just given a path as well.
And what is it that interests you in the 1%ers versus the 99%ers? Like, what is it? What are the characteristics of like the personality and I guess the physiology that interests you so much?
Yeah, I think there's two things. Like, I realized pretty early on that so hopefully this doesn't come across the wrong way, but I'm more interested in things than I'm interested in people. I'm really interested in how things work and what the mechanics of how can you help someone to get better? How can I scale something that I learn for myself to others? So I think for me, there's a lot of people who can help the general population to get better. And I could be one of those people, but I'm always interested in doing something that other people are not doing. I'm trying to ask myself the questions like, what are we missing? What could we be doing? How could we help these people get better? And it just happens to be that some of the lessons learned or some of the ideas are just not that relevant for general population because they still have to just learn how to squat and do a push-up and do a pull-up. Whereas with the more advanced people, we can start to talk about brain training and breathing and HRV and
the cool stuff.
You know, sprayable probiotic bacteria that might increase your thermal. You know, like we can get to really cool stuff that I'm interested in the cool stuff and things and systems and how things work. And then creating good relationships with people who really want to be the best they can be, because they're willing also to try things, experiment things, and they can be consistent, and really we can really see what works and what doesn't work.
And how have you evolved your thinking since, 2010? It's been 6 years. And that's a long time for you to be a coach for some of these athletes. And especially with I almost think in a way like the best coaches in the world are being constantly approached by the best athletes in the world. And so, a lot of them say yes, and they bounce around a little bit. And there's certain coaches like yourself and CJ and Ben that are like very sticky to athletes. Like, have you ever been very introspective on why you might think people are especially sticky to you, these high-level games athletes?
I think it's, if I'd have to say something, I think they can answer it better than I can, but I think it's that same thing that I just said, because I'm interested in finding questions. Not necessarily always saying that I have the answers, but I'm willing to ask the questions, and I'm willing to go really deep into the questions, both with simple things and complex things. I'm really willing to learn. That really is something that drives me, is how do I get better so I can serve others better. So I think the athletes that I've had the privilege to work with, like Annie, have from the beginning have challenged me, and they've kind of set me on this path to improve myself as a coach. And I think that there's a symbiotic relationship that comes from the need that the athlete has, and my ability to learn and ask for the questions that will help them to get there.
Yeah.
What are the questions that, so when you get someone like Annie, I know obviously she's progressed a lot, but in 2010, like, she was the best. What are the questions you're asking? Because the sport changes so much. So, like, when you get a new athlete, you got Mitch recently, like, what are the questions you ask to take someone that's already amazing, sort of like keep them progressing?
I think it's a combination of that simple and complex. I think there's a lot of simple things that we don't do very well yet as a sport or as a group of athletes. And for me, myself, my own practice and the practice of my athletes, there's some simple things that we need to keep going back to. From movement quality, that's a deep topic, to breathing, to nutrition, to hydration, to sleep. It's very easy to know what to do. It's very difficult to do it. So a lot of the things that I will keep going back to is, yes, the exploration of the exciting things, the new things, but also going back to how can we do things that we already know that we should be doing, and do that consistently. That's really where the practice goes with Annie. Or someone like Mitch is like, well, we can go back and clean a lot of movements. We can learn how to breathe. And we can learn some lifestyle things that will support the recovery and the training volume that is really obvious to say, really difficult again to do. So practice is really the key.
So you actually think you go back more towards the basics when you get a high-level athlete?
Yes, so you have to clean up the basics if you want to get to the top. It's very hard to understand something complex if you don't understand the simple first. So it's this idea of understanding simple things deeply that's really important, both for coaches and for athletes, I think. And if you have that, then you can explore the complex. And oftentimes there's tendency, for myself included, is to jump into these new cool complex things. But it is always that cycle. I get something interesting, it's exciting, and then I'm like, but in practice that doesn't really work. I have to go back to let's just do the basics really well. And then some things stick and some things don't stick.
When you first started the training plan? 2012? 12. In the first 12 months, how many people were following you?
Yeah, we had 30 people pretty quickly, and then we had maybe 40 after a year.
And then
I think I joined halfway through 2013.
Yeah, so we were maybe 100.
So that's how you know them so well, because you're fucking one of the only people on there.
Yeah,
I was the only Australian on there.
And then how many people follow it now?
Yeah, less than 1,000, more than 500.
That's massive. That's huge.
And then probably 10, 20,000 people do it for free without telling you.
I have some,
because I know that every person.
It's about 1 million.
There was a point at our gym where I think we had 3 or 4 accounts, and I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 people doing it. So I presume it's 10x.
30.
Yeah. No, and that's fine. In a sense, the idea from the beginning was to advance our sport, to advance our thinking about training, and help the athletes to be the best they can be. And I think we're still really far, but we've come far as well. But then secondly, to scale that experience to the masses, to scale that to people who will never have access to the coaches that I might be able to access through my networks, and get them that information in front of them. So it's good that it's grown. It's good that people are using it for free. Also, you should pay. But in a sense, I don't mind. If it's serving more people, that's great. Yeah,
one thing I can say about the training plan is that it does change, from what I could say, dramatically each year. It's not at all what you did the year before.
Constantly innovating.
Yeah. Huge change. Whereas some programs I feel are extremely similar.
it's kind of like a blessing and a curse. It's like I feel like I'm reinventing the wheel all the freaking time. But at the same time, I think it's necessary, like, because my thinking evolves all the time. And I learn new things, and I realize I made mistakes. And really, it is an experiment. It's about asking questions. So I find some answers, and I'm like, okay, we have to change this, and we have to change this. And maybe sometimes I discard things that actually work and try things that actually don't work. But for me, to keep it interesting, we have to keep exploring, because that is, for me, that's the true purpose of the training plan, is to find those questions that we need to ask.
Yeah, I know when we started doing it for the year of 2014 to 2015, the season, there was some massive changes, especially because I knew that because Raf followed it for 6-7 months, in the previous season. And one of them, the big things that stood out was, firstly, you brought on his name, Darren Ellis, if I'm correct, from CrossFit New Zealand, to do a lot of nutrition stuff. And despite being very just straight to the point, Darren, I suppose, and not varying his tone much, there was a ton of good, valuable information in there. So I'd write stuff down and take notes. That was obviously a massive change for you, and I'll ask you why you did that in a sec. But another thing you did is gymnastics holds. And that was definitely the first time, and I don't know if you still do that, but I got exposure to like a ring support hold or like a bottom of the dip hold.
You got well introduced.
Well introduced.
It's thorough.
Yeah. So who firstly introduced you to the holds, and what was the thinking behind it? Because in my mind, when I think of the training plan, those like 90-minute hold sessions, which I thought, I'm like, surely this is the last week. The next thing, like, oh my God, we're doing them again, but like 4 sets instead of 3. So like, what was the rationale behind those?
Well, I think if you look at movement, in a sense, movement it's complex, but it's really simple. You have a starting position, you have a finish position, and transition in between, right? So if you don't have those starting and finish positions, the transition is really hard to make. You don't have a reference point in space where you're going to go. So a lot of that static hold, from a conceptual perspective, is setting up those positions, those anchor points for your movement. Now, we could talk about at length things like connective tissue adaptations, nervous system adaptations, etc. That will come with it, but the simple idea was, if you don't know where to start and you don't know where to finish, the stuff in the middle doesn't really matter.
Right. And so did you see the improvements you thought you'd see with that stuff?
Yeah, so...
Or did something surprise you with it?
So Sarah Sigmundsdottir, who clearly done really well in the last 2 years, the games, she was on the training plan still at the time, till the end of previous year, until the games. And she would improve her muscle ups. I can't remember what she told me. It was like she went from 5 to 13 unbroken muscle ups by just focusing on those positions.
5 to 13.
Yeah, it was something like that. I can't remember the specifics, but it was a massive change. Like, oh, I guess they work. But yeah, you boys weren't the only ones who were like, oh my God, not another week.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think you have to fall in love with the boring stuff as well if you really want to be good.
Yeah, it definitely makes you appreciate like when you finally get to do a workout, like just a WOD, 21-15-9, like thrusters and like pull-ups. You're like, I'm gonna crush this shit. I'm just looking at everyone else in the comp. I'm like, you haven't been shaking over a bar, like having your teeth like smash into each other uncontrollably for like hours and hours every week. So it gives you a new appreciation for like the stuff that you get to do essentially every day. Yeah. It was really effective. So to my other question, Darren, why'd you bring Darren on board?
I think, in a sense, for the same reason that I would bring anyone else on board. He had information and a way of delivering it that I thought was useful, had value to the athletes, had value for me, to my own learning. And he's also the kind of person who will go out of his way to help you. I think for me the rule is, whether it's working with other coaches, other people, or other athletes, is that no assholes. Basically, like, I'd rather choose to work with someone, and Darren is really great at what he does, but I'd rather choose to work with someone who knows a little bit less, but who's willing to learn and who's a good person, rather than work with someone who's the best in the world, but they're an asshole. So Darren was a great guy. He knew what he was talking about. He was really willing to invest. So it felt very easy from the beginning.
He's not an asshole.
No, he's an awesome guy.
The other thing we noticed as well, the third aspect to this, was actually energy system training. And I don't know if we guessed it right, but it seemed like you got a lot from Joel Jamieson.
Yeah, I ran across... I remember coming to the games 2011, and Carl Parley picked me up from the airport, and I just went on for a couple hours to him about the energy system stuff. That was the year when I found Joel Jamieson stuff. Yeah. And Joel Jameson stuff is really the old Russian stuff. It's not his stuff. Yeah. Everyone's copying from other people. But he did a good job at putting it together in a way that was usable. And that was just another example of that, like, hey, let's try these HRI intervals, so HICT stuff, or let's do aerobic. I mean, we still do a lot of aerobic power intervals and things like that. Like, it was just really seeing how could we use this stuff to get better at what we do.
And did you find that some of that authentic conditioning that obviously had principles and science, like, didn't in the end work out as well in CrossFit because of the chaos, or like they just need to do more actual CrossFit stuff than like stick to all these intervals?
I mean, 2012, Annie won the games. Like, it worked really well.
Sure.
I think it's one of those things that everything works and everything doesn't work. It depends when you apply, what's the context. I think it's what I'm really not for is saying that any one thing is the best thing. I think it's like it has a purpose, there's a timing when to use it. I'm learning how to use it better as a tool to help athletes. But ultimately, if you want to be good at something, you have to do the thing. Like, if you want to be good at 21:59, at some point, there needs to be 21:59. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what's missing, like, when you just do like rows at a particular heart rate and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but that's also part of the training. And I think when you look at any other sport, most of the time we practice. Most of the time is practice. And I think that's one of the things that we can get so much better at in our sport is just practice. It's not training. I think we're doing a lot of training. I think we're getting pretty good at training, but I don't think we're that good at practice yet. And that is really the kind of the same idea, is that we need to do these things that don't look exactly like our sports to build the foundation that's going to allow us to do well in our sport.
What's an example of practice versus training?
So you could take any given workout and you could just kind of smash through it. It depends. Like, basically the question is, what is it for? What is this thing for? If you do, let's say you do 21:59 power snatch and pull-ups, right? You could just try to go for time, or you could go for a specific aspect of the movement. So you could focus on things like your posture, you could focus on your breathing, you could focus on the timing of that breath. Where do you breathe in the movement? Can you do the whole piece without getting out of breath because you're so efficient? You could focus on specific aspects of either one of those movements. You could focus on your pacing. You could focus on this. It's basically going in with a purpose, going in and asking yourself a question. What is this for? Why am I doing this? And then remembering, I think this is the key piece. What's the goal of practice and training? It's not to win, right? It's to get better so that you can be better in competition. I think a lot of times people forget that the goal is not to beat your friend. That can be useful in a certain context, but really the goal is to get better. And sometimes getting better means taking risks, going unbroken in a movement where you think you might not be able to, resting a little bit more so that you can then go unbroken, or, like there's a lot of different scenarios that you can play around with.
Yeah, some of the stuff that we saw when we did the program was like holding positions even in the middle of workouts, like pausing in positions, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so like classic barbell cycling, it's like how, it's again like me and Carl, we had this idea of marking positions. It's like music. It's like where it beats. So you're marking the positions in a power snatch, for example. The power position, the standing position, and then what is the transition between those two and the setup.
Yeah.
Again, and being, actually, it is, again, it goes back to the brain. It's like, you will always get what you prioritize. So if you go for quality matters, you'll get quality, and the quality is going to bring you speed and endurance, stamina, etc. Or you can prioritize the work rate all the time, and that will never bring you quality. So you can kind of have the one through the other, but not the other way around. Of course, there's times when you just have to go for it as well. But you have to have it all.
You feel like that's the mistake that some people make when they see a training plan? They're just like, there's so much shit here, I'm just going to hit it as hard as I can every single day. And they ignore the instructions like go 60, 70%, focus on movement quality, stay tight in the hollow position. They're like, fuck the hollow position, I'm going fast.
That's the people who don't pay for it, right? No. No, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that people are. That's why we so I think of it this way. There's the why you do these things. What's your goal? What is it for you as an individual? There's the how you do it, which really is the key, how you do it. And then there's the what are you going to do. And we try to provide not just the what, but we try to give people the why, the how a little bit as well, and the why to a degree. But we try to tell them how to do it. And that's where there's a lot of writing, because we're trying to say, hey, here's some things that you can think about. Focus on one of these, whatever is the thing that you need to work on. And because it is online and because we don't get access to all the athletes individually, then there are some compromises in the amount of information that we give. Somebody needs less and somebody needs more, and some think that they need less, but they actually need more.
Yeah.
Right? But sure, I'm sure that there's a lot of people who do the what, but they don't do the how.
Yeah. And you've, this is actually a question we bring up a lot with coaches because we find different answers often. you do a lot of coaching people online, essentially, whether it's, individual stuff or through the training plan.
Mm-hmm.
What are like the big things you see, like when you finally get hands on these people? I know Bart was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the thing that's sticking out to you that you're like, oh my God, we've now, because I have hands on you and eyes on you, it's like, holy shit, we've just done a year's worth of progress in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it comes down to like the basic currency of your training is 1 rep, and the quality of that rep is the quality of your training. So when you think about that, you think about movement. How do you do things? Really, that does matter. So I think the most common finding is that people, kind of what you suggested, that people are just kind of going through the motions, and they're not really asking themselves the question like, why am I doing this? They're just doing it because it was on the plan. Whereas when we have the time to go one-to-one or in a group setting, now that's an opportunity to clarify, hey, here's why we do it this way, and by the way, this is how we need to do it to get to that goal. So that's the biggest thing, and I do think that there's significant changes that come from understanding that.
Yeah. And a lot of people often say as well, these coaches, is like the more advanced an athlete becomes, like the more their programming needs to be individualized, whereas beginners just need general sort of stuff. And do you agree with that thing, or do you not agree with it?
I think, in an ideal world, like I said, the AI is going to do all of our programming completely individually and modify it daily based on our readiness, etc. But for now, an example would be Bjormin. He was 3rd previous year, he was 8th this year. So he's established himself as one of the top names in our sport on the men's side.
Yeah.
He's followed the training plan, like box standard training plan, twice a day programming, all this time. Now we've had some one-to-one time, we've been able to work. He's also get some support from other people, got some coaching from other people. But essentially he's been following that, and 3rd fittest man on earth, 8th fittest man on earth. So clearly at the highest level, the how matters, I think, more than the what. But hey, if you can get both, even better. But I think what would be really arrogant of anyone of us to say is that we have the perfect program for any given human being. Like we are just not there yet.
Yeah.
So doing approximately the right thing, but doing it right, oftentimes matters more than having the perfect program, because that perfect program doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, I think that if you can have an individual program that's written specifically for you by someone who sees you often, all the time, that's great. That can be super valuable. But I think most people just aren't there yet. As long as they do how to say this? It's a kind of difficult question to answer, because there's a lot of value in getting individual coaching in your movement.
Yeah.
But once you're doing the right things, approximately, and you're doing them right, the exact specifics tend to matter a little bit less.
Yeah.
That's how I would say it.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like a coach could, put you in a position where he tests for all your deficiencies, and then he programs to weed out those deficiencies as effectively as possible. And then kind of once they're out, he could almost put you on like a general program and be like, we fixed all your movement issues. We fixed your lats don't fire, or like your strict handstand push-ups suck because you had like some dysfunction in your upper back, and now we fixed it. Essentially, you can do whatever you want now, like you're physically prepared. I feel like that's what you're kind of saying.
I think that's a good way to think about it. I look at a lot of it from a kind of movement neuroscience perspective nowadays. Okay. So if you can fix the brain of the athlete in terms of they don't have those deficiencies, visual imbalance, vestibular function, their cerebellum works well, etc. You could go into a lot of depth and detail in there. And I don't know that any one of us is quite there yet, but that's some of the things that I'm very interested in working on right now. If you kind of create that clean slate, in a sense, then there are some general things that go together with any given sport that the athletes have to do, and they have to establish certain minimum levels in things so that they have a viable level of strength, etc. And that can be addressed with a very general program. This is why I feel strongly that people should have a personal coach, or they should have someone who has eyes on, have a good network. So I think of it oftentimes with the high-level individuals, that I want to be the director of performance and then help them coordinate. Let's say the guys in Australia, like I want to help them coordinate the local people around them who can support them, have hands-on and eyes on them, and then just kind of oversee that process and be there to help them create those connections and also to guide the general process. But it's still the general program, but you get the specific inputs from the individual coaches.
Yeah. Is that like where someone, like we had Eric 101, weightlifting 101 on the program? Fundamental Eric. Eric weightlifting 101. Is that like where he fits in? He's like an expert in the barbell. And I see Goodmanson on his videos. Like he mentions he trains there, but he's obviously still has training plan.
Yeah. So that relationship. He does not anymore. He used to in the past.
Okay.
They work together. Someone who's an expert in a field who can bring in value for the athlete. can be extremely useful, right? Same thing with gymnastics or running or swimming or whatever the specialty area is. There are people who spend their time getting very good at a specific aspect. It'd be foolish from my perspective to pretend that I know everything better than they do, but rather try to leverage what they do and then be very careful. I think this is the really trick, to be very careful of people who say this is the only way. Because then you already kind of know that they stopped asking the questions. They already have all the answers.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong kind of person for me.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I definitely see it in some ways. People are like, oh, no, that's silly. No, my way is the best. Like, trust me, you got to do this. And it's like,
If
that works for you, and some athletes.
if that would be the case, everyone would follow the same programming,
Yeah,
right? And they don't, because we don't have the answers yet. We're just kind of figuring it out.
right. So let's put like the big stuff aside, the 99%. What's the 1% that Jami does with his athletes? Well, I know you can't talk about all of it because that would be like the secret sauce.
But when you're like spraying antibiotics onto their eyelids or whatever.
Yeah, so
What do you feel like is 1% stuff that actually makes a difference?
1% stuff that actually makes a difference. You know, ironically, some of the 1% stuff that actually makes a difference are things like sleep that nobody's doing, but everyone knows they should be doing.
Yeah.
But if we go in the field of that, might be more exciting.
Well, how do you enhance sleep?
How do you enhance sleep? Magnesium, oil behind the knees, very useful.
Mitch sprayed that on me actually one
Behind the
night.
knees,
Yeah,
yeah. I'd say pretty well.
That's pretty good. Glycine. I mean, I think it's like supplements are supplements and they should be used based on blood tests. And we try to run with the high-level athletes. Ideally, the best case scenario for me would be that we do genetic testing, then we do very good hormonal profiles, blood testing, and then based on that we provide supplementation. That is there to support their normal physiology. That's required. Yes and no. We've done some of it. We haven't done all of it. It's kind of like a experimental process. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Because the field is just so new that we don't know.
Yeah.
But I would say that a lot of the 1% are trying new things. You know, like how is your gut biome like? Let's take a look at that and let's see if we can do something about it. Let's look at your skin bacteria. This was just a very new thing I just mentioned because it was such a curiosity that, you know, potentially spraying your skin with this probiotic bacteria can help you with the thermoregulation by transferring the ammonia into nitric oxide on your skin. That can also help you reduce inflammation. Like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
To me, it might or might not have utility. We've experimented with some stuff like, I don't know, like sodium bicarbonate, right? What's the problem with that?
What is the problem with it?
It makes you shit your pants, right, when you have it.
I don't know.
That's a bad problem.
Yeah, that's a bad problem, but it's been shown to be really useful for high-intensity exercise. So there are people who are developing products around that to try to get around those problems. And those
Like
are
nappies or something. Or
yeah, like nappies. Yeah. Adult diapers. So
What nappy?
so those are the interesting questions. If there are things that have been established, very little has been established to work for sure. But the brain training.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely something that I am extremely interested in and spending most of my time on the research and study. I think it dictates a lot of the performance in terms of movement capacity, your strength, your stamina, your breathing, super important. Not just doing that stuff like the Wim Hof method that's getting very popular, that's useful, but I think also respiratory muscle awareness, competency, so you can breathe any way you want. You get to choose, you don't just have one or two options.
Do you have tests for that?
Yeah.
What are the tests?
It's kind of like, it's
Weird
hands-on. It's hands-on stuff.
Like breathe into my hand or something from the back?
Yeah, so you could look at all your inspiratory muscles, all your expiratory muscles. Are they all firing off? Are they working? And then there's ways, manual techniques, etc., that you can make them fire. So that first level would be building respiratory competency, and then once you have that, now you can do inspiratory, expiratory muscular training. As an example, you can do very simple stuff. You could do breath pause. So
Box breathing?
yeah, so that's a method. That's not a test. That's really just a technique, right?
Oh, sorry,
it's
you're
useful.
still talking about testing yet.
But in terms of testing, it's like if I ask you to now take a deep breath in and hold it. How long can you hold it just without doing anything crazy before? More interestingly, if you just breathe normally, you breathe out and now hold your breath. If you can hold it less than 30 seconds, we have a problem.
Right.
And most
full
people,
exhalation?
yeah, full exhale, you should be able to hold 30, no problem.
Yeah.
And so there are some simple tests that you could do. So I think breathing, super important. I think about it kind of in a way of like, what will kill you first if you don't do it? So breathing would be first, right?
Hydration?
Hydration, sleep, food, movement. If you don't move, you'll die over time, right? We see this in hospital beds in patients.
This is an amazing way of thinking about it.
sick,
Yeah,
right.
that's cool.
So that's the baseline wellness, and then movement. With movement comes your brain. How's your vision balance? How is your proprioception? And those three things, like I just lay them out like, oh, there's 3 words, but actually that's probably a couple of years of work
Yeah.
to make all those things work well. So, I mean, I think the brain is the 1%.
Yeah.
That's definitely the 1%. That's the next kind of frontier in training that people should be looking into. I think genetics, but genetics is kind of like, it's tricky. It's tricky. You have to do the tests. You have to find the practitioners. There's very few people. We're lucky to have some good contacts, but there's very few people who can interpret the test results in a meaningful way.
Right.
So those are things. And then all of a sudden, every time I come to games, there's something that just kind of like drops into my hand. Somebody is like, oh, I have this thing, like they do this thing called MERT, for example, which is they use magnets to change your brainwave activity in the brain, and they found that could be useful potentially for human beings in general, not just athletes.
Right.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, things like that. So there's a lot of technologies, I think, that I'm always looking forward to testing and experimenting with, but remembering that we need to breathe and hydrate and sleep. Go back to those basics.
Yeah.
Go back to those basics as often as I can.
Yeah. Oh, that's a cool little formula. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah. And if someone is not doing well on the breathing tests, and you get hands on them and you kind of get the stuff going, how much of a percentage change do you think you could be adding there? Like, is there a lot of potential there? Like, is someone really screwing themselves up with poor breathing?
Most everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's some really interesting research papers on this, looking at the VO2 max in cyclists, etc., and work output, like time for a given distance. They've seen significant improvement. 6 weeks, 20 to 40% improvement in performance with respiratory musculature training and awareness. That's pretty significant for our high-level athlete.
Massively.
It's ridiculous. Your respiratory musculature takes a big part of your blood flow and your energy supplies during exercise. Your brain and the respiratory musculature will take a lot. So if you're inefficient in your breathing, or you're excessively breathing, which most of us, it's not the problem, is not that we don't breathe enough, is we breathe way too much because we have no control. And air hunger is a very primitive fear. So when you feel like you don't have air, you're trying to gasp for it, when actually what you need is a big exhale to balance your CO2 and oxygen. So what will happen, there's this thing called metabolic reflex, which is very interesting. You run out of fuel here. You will shunt blood from your extremities to the respiratory musculature to keep breathing, right? Again, survival.
Yeah.
So that can be a big issue. So there's some estimates, 20 to 40% of your energy during exercise will go into here. So if you get 5% from that, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right. So massive.
Yeah. It could potentially, if you're doing that like air starvation, could that lead to you like throwing up because your body's like panicking, or have you not heard of that?
No, you increase your pH.
Okay.
Right, you would get more acidic, essentially, so decrease pH. You would get more acidic with the hydrogen ions accumulating in your body because you're not getting them out, which can lead to you vomiting. But it's also going to be a big peripheral fatigue factor. So fatigue is always about central nervous system, and it's really fighting between your why am I doing this on a deep level versus all the peripheral factors that tell you to stop doing exercise, like we're going to die right now. So it's always that battle. So if the air hunger it's a primitive fear, right? You run out of breath, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So is that like that's the feeling you get when you just, I need to step away sometimes? Like you're doing a workout and you feel like I need to fucking step away.
Yeah. Yeah,
like that sort of feeling,
So your brain always goes for what? It goes for survival. It doesn't go for performance. It goes for survival right now, not 1 minute from now. So it doesn't care what happens next. So, people pass out in various situations because the stress is too much. It's better for your brain to shut down, make you stop moving, than to have you continue. That's a very mild version of that same extreme case. But yeah, absolutely. Like, why don't you just pick up the barbell? Because your brain is telling you you're going to die, essentially, from a survival perspective. So it's like, that's why brain is so important. That's why breathing is so important. That's why creating a safe environment for the athlete to perform is really important, because ultimately it's this battle between the survival threat and we need to get the heck out of here versus, I need to look good on cameras and perform well and win this competition, right? So that's the balance that everyone's constantly playing with, but we just don't think about it.
It's almost like the best athletes might fall too far towards, I have to do this because I want to be the champ, and then we get something like what happened to Carl Webb and Murph last year, and they push too hard because they refuse to listen to what is truly happening, and they just tip themselves over the edge, clearly. And I mean, it happened to Annie as well.
Yeah, but that's contextual, right? Because for them, that was the most important thing, was to do well.
Of course.
Like, it is, without getting too philosophical about it, but it is from a survival perspective. Doing well for these people, doing well at the CrossFit Games, it's really freaking important. That is why they are here on Earth, right? At this moment, they are doing it. All their life revolves around, I want to be the best, I want to be the fittest on Earth. So the why is so strong that they can get past a lot of these peripheral mechanisms for fatigue and just continue to do exercise when they maybe should not do that.
So when someone is in this situation where it's like, this is what they're here for, this is 12 months longer, it's their whole life building up to these moments. What is the conversation that you're having with these athletes to help them? Do you need to have a conversation with them, or is that, in the week leading up, is it just, just positive reinforcement, or do people need different things? Like, what is the chat like with your athletes?
I think it depends. And I think I'm still learning. But I think that really the individual athletes, I think the most important thing is to deal with reality of things, how they are, no matter how painful those things might be, sometimes to face. So I think that
don't avoid them.
Yeah, don't avoid them. I think fear becomes a problem when you avoid it. Then now you're scared. You're not facing that fear. I think it's only by facing that fear that you can get where you want to go. And like anyone who comes to CrossFit Games or any kind of major competition in their life or any kind of situation like that, if they pretend that they have no fear, then like Tony Blauer wrote something very useful. I think he posted this on Instagram a while ago. It's like claiming that you don't have any fear has no psychological value because it's simply not true. And the first thing is to deal with reality. It's like, hey, there's some fear. What can we do with it? How can we turn that into excitement from anxiety? So a lot of the conversations turn around, how do we flip the switch from something that's like anxiety and excitement are very close neurochemically to each other. So that switching that flip, it's pretty easy in a sense if you know how to do it. So a lot of it is about the different coping mechanisms. How do you face pain? Pain is going to be there at the CrossFit Games, right? Yeah. How do you face the pain? Do you dissociate? Do you associate with learning different strategies? And then a lot of it should be built throughout the years. It should be built throughout the whole year. It would be foolish to think that you're going to somehow come up with mental toughness on the game day if you didn't have it before. Yeah. And that varies from individual to individual and year to year. It changes, right? So we have to evolve as coaches. That's the biggest challenge and the opportunity for us is to get better as to figure out what happened, like how did things change, and how can we help to turn the boat again in the direction where it needs to go.
And do you think people that inherently, when they start, they're like, this person is just not tough, like you can just tell they're being a pussy on lots of things? Do you think, I think the standard answer is like, you're born that way. So it's like tough people are born tough and soft people are born soft. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. No.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just don't buy into that at all. I think, talent is overrated kind of idea is that, some people might be tougher genetically, neurochemically, but it's practice. It's practice. Your neuroplasticity, your brain changes every single day. If you consistently practice doing things in a certain way, you can become the person you want to be. And I think it is something that you can develop. It's not something that you are just born with. Some people, I think it's a environment, nature-nurture kind of idea, is that the environment that you grew up in. And they've done some studies on the Bulgarian weightlifters, for example, where they find that when they have had success, they had so all of a sudden they had money and fame in their own country, and all of a sudden their training motivation went down. Things were too easy. So I think that we can all get soft and we can all get hard through practice and training. So it just has to be a conscious, intentional effort to get there.
And have you seen it happen both ways with your athletes?
Yeah, I've seen it go both ways for sure. So that's why I think it's difficult for anyone. Like going back to these Bulgarians, success. It's hard to learn from success. It's much easier to learn from failure. So when you have a lot of success, things get more difficult. You need to ask much more from yourself than when you haven't had success. So it's an ebb and flow. Things go, I'm some days I'm tougher, some days I'm not so tough. Yeah. It changes.
Yeah. Just to use an example that most of our listeners would know about, like with Ben Garrard, we've discussed this topic a lot. And for those who don't know, you're his coach. He basically achieved what his lifelong goal was, and because he had so many setbacks along the way, which we've discussed in the episodes with him, it's like that was driving him, those failures were driving him towards the success of qualifying to the CrossFit Games. And like you said, it's harder to learn from success because he had the success, he ticked the biggest box that he always wanted to do, and he felt very lost after that. Is then like when you see him, like, are you happy to let him just go on and be like, look, if you just don't want to be that amazing athlete anymore, if you've ticked the box, then go on with it? Or do you feel like, is there a way of you understanding, like, Ben, I know I can tell you want to do it, but your head's not right. We just got to kind of figure it out, and then we'll get you back there. Is there like a way for you to know if it's like he's done or like he's just in a slump and we need to get him out?
So how I think about it is that I care about the athletes that I work with as athletes, but I care more about them as people. So someone like Ben, he has moved his life forward in a tremendous way this year. He's built his business. He's moved to a new place. He's done a lot to build his life in the direction where he wants to go. And a lot of my coaching has also been around that. So once we have that relationship, once we're working one-to-one, whether you want to be an athlete going forward or not, if there's something I can do to help you, to build the mindset and the tools to get where you want to go, then that's my job as a coach. I don't see being a coach as uniquely something about sport. I see it more about something it's life. So if I can create great people or help people to be great rather than help them to be great athletes, I'd rather take that. Now, if I can have both, which is obviously what we're going for, then I'll take both. So for me, the question is not, is he done or is he not done? The question is, are we done? And we're not done. We're still working on helping him to be better at whatever he wants to be better at.
Right.
And how do you work on a mindset then with someone overseas? I don't know how. I think he's maybe the only client you have that you don't actually see.
Yeah, like I saw him around the Invitational last time. He spent some time in London, came to hang out.
But you don't see him regularly?
No. But that's what I mean. It's like sometimes it's a question of having interventions. And sometimes it's about setting things in motion, planting some seeds and then letting them grow. And I think it's really important that athletes become independent. This is a great idea. Stephen Cowie talked about this idea of dependence, independence, and interdependence. If you're dependent on someone, you cannot be interdependent. But if you're just independent, I think the idea is that if your dreams are so small that it only takes one person to get there, you should reevaluate, right? Those dreams are way too small. Yeah. Right, so really the goal is to help athletes move from dependent to independent if they're there, and then figure out how can we work interdependently. So that means that I don't have to be there every single day. We can have a conversation once a week, once a month, once every 2-3 months. Maybe we see once a year, but the wheels are set in motion, and that initial work is the most important one. And someone like Ben, I mean, I think the timing was right. He was looking for something. I had some ideas that helped him to move in the right direction, and then things just kind of spun off from there. So I don't feel like I have to be there all the time. I think it's just about saying the right words, giving the right references, the resources, and let them grow. Not try to make them grow, but just let them grow.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you can the difference is crazy when you see someone like that change. So obviously you believe in coaching a lot. So I guess if someone does follow the training plan, like they need also a coach probably as well. Would you feel that way about someone?
Yeah, ideally. It's like I said, ideally for me, if you want to have the experience of training, like ultimately I'd like to provide everyone with the experience of training like a professional athlete, if that's what they're looking for. So that entails that you have the plan that you follow, right, and the how-tos, and you're learning independently so you can become independent. But at the same time, you want to create that circle of people, that environment where you can thrive. And that means training partners, the right gym, the right coaches, maybe multiple coaches, maybe therapists, etc. And we try to provide as much of that as we can, but of course we cannot be everywhere. So that in person, having a coach or even a training partner who has eyes on to give you feedback, someone you can trust and someone who's actually willing to give you the feedback that you need to hear rather than what you'd like to hear.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I would like people to have a coach there as well.
Yeah. Do you have a coach personally?
Do I have a coach?
Yeah.
I don't. I've tried. I'm really terrible at this stuff. I have mentors.
Yeah.
I have people that I speak with that I really respect, and I listen to their opinions, and I'm very honest with them about what's going on and get their feedback, and sometimes brutally honest feedback, and I think that's really valuable. I tried to have a coach that I paid, but it wasn't really working for me. That
was that like a business sort of coach, something like that?
Mentors.
Okay, yeah.
Mentors. So I have people, kind of like a mastermind, so I can go to people and ask them questions, get feedback on the ideas. But that's also something, again, it's like things are imperfect, right? So would it be useful to maybe have someone? I think so. I think what I try to do, though, is I try to do things movement-wise that I'm not good at. So I will go and take handstand classes to be a beginner. Or I'll play the guitar to be a beginner. I do things so that I can be a beginner, so I can feel what it feels to be coached. But I don't have a coach as such.
And before we wrap with our 3 questions, I'm conscious of your time. What is the future of training plan? Is it going to be essentially as the program as it exists now, and until you kind of fulfill maybe your goals with your top athletes, essentially? Or is it a platform for something much bigger? Do you have some big ideas that you potentially want to share?
I think I'm always fascinated about how do we scale the things that we learn in one area to other areas. Somebody already has all the answers you need. You just don't know that person yet. So trying to become that person for someone else. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there in applying the things that we've learned over the years of working with individual athletes and also working on the training plan that could work in a lot of other high performance areas really well. So I'm definitely always looking to scale beyond of just our sport. If I'd be happy at saying, okay, once we achieve the goals that we want to achieve in our sport, then we're done. I mean, Annie's won twice, she's been second twice. I don't feel like from that perspective, there's anything to win, but there is the curiosity of how do we do things better. And I don't think that is ever going to end. It's going to continue to be this exploration. And I think one of the things is technology is going to come whether you want to or not. So like, how will you take advantage of the future that's going to be there tomorrow? So those are the things that I'm thinking about a lot.
Okay. And is training plan going to offer more stuff like training camps or seminars? Do you do that stuff already?
We don't do that currently, but we are definitely going to do things in person because there's so much value in that in-person experience. So hopefully coming to Australia. We are planning to come to Australia.
Whether just to be on training plan to go? I'll pay you money.
Yes.
I'm back on.
Yeah, exactly. No, we're going to... I think I'm at this point, I'm really just curious. I'm curious about what people need, what their perception is of what they need and what I think that they might need and where those two things intersect. So we don't have anything formal planned, but I love teaching. I'm not currently teaching. I was teaching for many years and teaching seminars for CrossFit HQ. So I'm definitely going to go back to teaching, but to teach, I must learn. So at the moment, I'm learning.
You want to teach coaches or you want to teach athletes?
It's a good question. To be honest, I want to mentor coaches and I want to teach athletes because I think that, again that independence is so important. Just being able to have a control of your own life and your own training. I don't think anyone should have to tell you what to do. You should know how to do it. Like, is that guy, Kai Green, the bodybuilder?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's my hero.
Yeah, exactly, my hero as well. So if your dreams are more important,
fucking love Kai Green.
Yeah, if your dreams are more important to someone else than they're for you, then you have a sad thing coming. And so I think that athletes need to really learn personal responsibility and how to do it, how to have the tools to be able to do it. So I'm really interested in the athlete, more so than the coach. But I think by mentoring the coaches, we can help create the environment for the athletes, but not looking to do any seminars as such.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
I would fucking love a camp if you can bring that shit to Sydney. We're like 10 minutes from the airport.
We'll come and do one-to-one training camp.
10
days.
Oh, we got
10 days.
We've got quite a few athletes now.
$50,000.
Get Kyle in. Get the boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a good group of guys.
Yeah,
there's a really good group of guys. I just met with Sammy. I think there's a good group of people in Australia that are very good athletes, that are hungry. And I think there's a lot to learn for us and for them. So hopefully we can help.
Nice. All right, so we've got 3 questions for you. And I know you've never listened to the podcast before, so you have no idea what's coming. So the first question is, what is something you do every day that you feel like is integral to the success of the day?
I think I'm obsessed with learning. I have a really hard time if I don't do something by the end of the day. If I haven't read or watched or had a conversation that was meaningful about something and I learned something new, I have a very hard time winding down. So I think that's the most consistent thing. I've tried a lot of things and I do a lot of things consistently, but not every day. Apart from just learn something new every day.
How do you ensure that you've learned something new? If it's getting towards the end of the day and you don't feel like you've done that, are you going to just go to a certain website or pick up a certain book?
I go to my Kindle, which has a couple of hundred unread books waiting for me. I'm a hoarder when it comes to Kindle.
That like one-click buy on Amazon?
Yeah. I have I think it's 600 books at the moment. So.
Oh my god.
So there's always something. I'm just gonna click on something. I'm gonna learn something. And oftentimes what I want to learn about is this meta things. Like how to learn, I'm interested in the specific details, like the hard skills. But that's more like a daytime learning when I can really commit to it. But if I'm just like, I haven't learned anything today, I'm gonna go and try to figure out how to think about things better. That's kind of what I'm obsessed with.
Are you doing something like something physical every day as well? Because when people think about it a lot, you're traveling a lot, you're pretty tan for a thin guy.
Yeah.
Must spend a lot of time in LA, but you're also doing programming online. What's the physical stuff that you do every day? I know you're, like you mentioned, handstands and stuff like that. Are you doing the training plan?
Yeah, so because I'm not a competitive CrossFit athlete, I'm not looking to compete in our sport anymore. So the training plan would be the wrong program for me.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
So for me, I'll definitely, so I'll do some brain training every day, whether it's vision drills, balance drills, cerebral drill, whatever it's going to be. I'm going to do something. I was throwing a ball against the wall before you guys came in.
Where do you get that sort of training from? Is there brain training plan?
Sportiness?
Some other Finnish guy?
Planning. Yeah, no, I just
brain
developed that. There's books.
Okay,
there's books. There's online research. There's a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff out there that I'm studying.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, so that's one thing. I want to make sure that I do that as part of my training. Some kind of a breath work every day. Something, even if it's just taking 10 seconds to feel my pec minor when I breathe in, like something. And
is that to make sure you're not tightening it up as you breathe?
No, I want it to work. If I use it, I just don't want to overuse it.
Yeah.
So just breath awareness. And then some kind of physical exercise. But I'm thinking of terms of movement. Like I think it's more like I'm not training for something in particular, so I just want to make sure that I move. So oftentimes it is kicking up to a handstand and just messing around and seeing what I can do. Or I do the foundation plan from the training plan. Sometimes I'll just go to a class. I love just going into a class and just letting someone else think about my training.
Yeah, it's nice.
Rather than me. But yeah, something you have to move daily. Otherwise,
I actually remember when I was at CrossFit Thames, we had an open workout. It was like the everyday crazy workout because it was Christmas time.
Yeah.
You actually killed the workout that day.
I used to be so fit.
Yeah, you're actually fucking fit.
I remember that time.
Can you still back squat like 180 or whatever it was?
Yeah. I got to 197.5, and then the.
Oh, what happened?
No. And the regional. So this what happened. I went last year to the regional. No, was it last year? Yeah, California regionals to work with Courtney. I squatted at Kelly's gym 197.5. I was like 200. Here we come. And then 2 weeks of regionals happened, and I went back to 175, and I was like,
fuck, that's close.
Yeah, the worst thing that could happen to an athlete is to coach at the regionals or the games. That's like the worst thing for your fitness. Yes.
What body weight were you at when you were trying to do that?
Oh, 83.
Okay. What are you now?
Kilos. 83.
Oh, wow.
I know, there's no excuse, right? Yeah.
Well, we'll go test now. So the second question is, what's something recently that you changed your mind on? That was like a long-held belief of yours.
It's interesting. I really tried to think about this question. And I think I almost would say there's not many things that I've held beliefs on for a very long time. I feel like they're constantly changed by things that I learn and the conversations that I have. I think some of the big things for me, like looking at a little bit, like it's taken a couple of years to get to, is this idea of Finnish culture is very much, I can do it, I'll do it now because I'll do it faster, I'll do it better even if I don't. So really appreciating that idea that I mentioned before, that if your dreams are so small that you can accomplish them by yourself, then you need to revisit those dreams and make them bigger. So I've really learned that I need people. Right. I've always worked with people, but I feel now more like, hey, I'm really bad at things and I'm really good at things. And if I focus on the things that I'm really good at, I can be successful, whatever that means. And if I focus on doing everything, then I will not be very successful. So that's going to move from intellectual understanding to more emotional and practical understanding.
And do you feel personally like in the last 12 months you've become more successful, just in general?
I'd say yes, but not so much for any external accomplishment, but more so because I've managed to refine my life philosophy.
That's
a little bit more. Better clarity as to who I am and where I want to go and how do I want to get there.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that personal exploration has been the biggest growth that I've had on this side of the other things that have come with it.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because I think that's really important for those listening because if people look at it from the outside, they go, Bjormin and Annie went worse. Actually, no, Annie didn't go worse. She pulled out, so I guess but she didn't win, is my point.
Yeah.
And Bjormin didn't win, yeah. And so they'd be like, oh, Yami's
Mitch Cinnamon definitely didn't win as well.
Yami's less successful. But I don't think it's the case at all. I think you have an amazing thing with the training plan. You have a life where you can travel across the world and get a tan and it's pretty incredible. I'd say you're very successful, even though you don't give yourself maybe all the credit you deserve. So I think it's really good that you feel that way.
Yeah, I think it's good to be hungry. I think it's good I'd rather be a little bit dissatisfied in terms of the external things than to be completely satisfied. Because again, when things are too easy, there's no need to grow. I would say, I think for Bjormin, for example, like going from 3rd to 8th in that company with the events that really weren't his strengths, I think that's big success.
Yeah.
Lukas went from 30th to 14th, so that's success. I think the only thing that we didn't quite have as we wanted was, Bjormin maybe push him to the top 5, and then Annie. Obviously, the things didn't go as we wanted them to go. But hey, she finished the games last year. She didn't finish, so I think that's progress, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. All right, and final question: your favorite quote, and what does it mean to you?
I think that there are many. There's a book, I don't know if you guys have read this, Resilience by Eric Greitens.
So many books we've got to get when we get back
He's got
home.
fucking 600 on his Kindle.
Yeah, you can anytime. Just let me know. I'll give you give you some suggestions. So he said, and I kind of alluded to this before, but if we're intentional about what we consistently do, we can practice who we want to become, and through practice we can become who we want to be. So I really believe, kind of going back to that idea, is that our people mentally tough on it. Like, you can become whoever you want to be, but it's not going to come easy. You need to tell your brain consistently, day after day, that it's important to make that change. And that change is going to happen physically in your brain daily, but it's going to take some time to groove down that path. So you have to be intentional about how you do things and why you do things and what you're doing. And you have to do them consistently, day after day after day. So you can't pretend to be someone today. You actually have to become that person through hard work.
That's awesome.
It reminds me a bit of, I guess, on the training plan then, the questions you asked before you start the workout.
Yeah.
It's sort of the same thing.
Yeah, so
It's like being really conscious of like why I'm actually doing my training today.
yeah, what is it for? Like, what can I do now that I couldn't do before this? The same guy, I mean, very good way. This is something I talk to my athletes about all the time. A lot of people live their life this way. They have emotions that lead to actions that lead to their identity, right? So you take an extreme case. I feel down, therefore I don't do nothing, therefore I'm a loser.
Yeah,
right?
I'm with you. Yeah.
So a much better way to do it is to wake up in the morning, choose your identity, who are you, take action accordingly, and then you're going to get the feelings that you want. So this is from the same guy, Eric Greitens.
Reverse engineering.
Yeah, reverse engineering. So I think that's really what it's about, is choose who you want to be, and then take action, and then you're going to become that, not rather than the other way around.
Yeah. Have you heard of the 5-minute journal?
Mm-hmm.
Do you use it?
No, but I do more like morning pages
Okay.
style, like actually with Kenny. This is something that we started 2 years ago when I met him. For 2 years, we call each other every week and kind of hold each other accountable that you do your writing. And just, I do that.
Is that just writing blank piece of paper every morning?
Yeah, whatever comes to your mind. Like, just put the pen on paper and go. And then normally the second or third page has something meaningful. And
is that first thing in the morning?
Yeah, ideally, it doesn't happen every day, unfortunately, but it's the first thing in the morning. It's kind of, I don't know, are you guys familiar with the concept of resistance?
Yeah, like do the work and Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah, Pressfield, right?
So
so you want to, you want to wake up before the resistance does and put the pen on paper before, the inner critique awakens, so that you can be more indiscriminate about what you put in there and actually get something truthful out that's going to serve you, rather than try to write something that you think that you should be writing.
Yeah.
So yeah, first thing in the morning is the best time.
Yeah. I think Jami said more in this podcast than a lot of our other guests in half the time. It's been amazing.
You are extremely efficient with words, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a Finnish thing? Mika doesn't speak very much. The only other Finnish guy I know.
Yeah, I've got so much out of this. I
Yeah.
feel like we've been going for 3 hours. It's only been 58 minutes. So where can we send people to get more of this stuff?
The training plan.co.
Yep.
Is there still 2 training plans, or is there...
There's 7.
Whoa.
No, there is. There is.
Finnish humor.
Yeah.
Finnish sarcasm.
No. There's actually 7 plans now.
Really?
So there's the foundation, which is
7.
It was 2 when we were doing
It was 1. The one.
I know. How bad do you think it's going to be for me writing all these programs?
Like exponential growth.
Yeah. So the idea is this: that there's people who just need the foundations, and they need to do more of the 21-15-9 and EMOMs and things that, more simple things. And we have a program for that now, foundation. And then we have the competitor, which is once a day, and then advanced competitor, which is the twice a day program. So like between 5 sessions a week versus 10 sessions a week. So they're quite a big jump in terms of like your commitment. And then now we, in trying to address the issue that different people will need different things, we try to create paths. And really what I'm creating secretly at the background is a framework for experimentation. That's why I have all these different programs, so I can plug in different components of the program in different programs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then test if they work independently.
Yeah.
So I look at programming like software development.
Right.
From
So like secret programs that are like acting within the 3 programs. Is that what you're saying?
So you're a dream within a dream.
There's a
Within
dream.
a dream.
Yeah.
It's podcast and a podcast.
Podcast and a podcast and a podcast. Yeah, so think of it this way. You take something like a simple movement like a toes to bar and you say, hey, here's a way I think that people can get better at toes to bar. Let's plug it into 6 different programs and let's see if they really get better. If
Yeah.
everyone gets better across the board, then it's like, oh, it actually works.
yeah.
If one group gets better and 5 don't, then I'm pretty sure that this wasn't the thing.
Yeah.
Right. So really, that's again goes back to what is it for? What is training plan for? Is to ask questions. So I'm trying to create a framework where I can ask questions better, so I can get some answers that then lead to more questions, so we can get better. So that's why we have so many programs now, but also so that people can choose to focus on strength or conditioning or getting better at the sport specifically.
Do any affiliates follow training plan? Like say the foundations for everyone, or is that not?
We have a lot of requests, but we haven't said yes to anything.
Cool.
Just because again, I don't know if they would serve them in the way that they think it might serve them. Because again, we're not interested in general fitness.
Yeah, the point is
Really
the
not.
sport of
The
CrossFit.
point is the sport, or competitive fitness in general, like outside of the official CrossFit competitions.
Yeah.
A lot of people nowadays will not make the games, so that their main goal might be some local competition somewhere that they want to prepare for. So that's what it's for. It's not for general fitness.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it's got the My Muscle Project personal endorsement, as our loyal followers know. So yeah, the training plan is more than affordable, and I think for the value you get for it, it's an incredible program. And I some days definitely miss it. I definitely miss the grind of the training plan. So
one other thing I say about the training plan is that you learn so much about yourself when you do the training plan, I find. And I think it's because you have so much like workouts and intervals and like repeating the same workout at different interval format. Like after I finished the training plan, I felt like I was set up for success because I could like read workouts way better than other people and stuff. Like I would read a workout and be like, yeah, I can hold like 5 muscle ups on the minute in like this 9-minute workout. What other movements are there?
yeah.
And I really feel like other people that just do more random programs or just without those sort of things, like don't have that mindset. I can't plan a workout in the open the same way.
I did so many styles of running in the one cycle that I knew how to run like the 3.2k test or whatever it was.
Exactly what pace.
So many different ways and get like the same time and be the same effort. Like I had like 19 different running styles by the end of it. It was amazing. Yeah, my running improved heaps. That was just one aspect.
That's very cool to hear, guys, because like for me that the whole thing is always the vision is so far ahead of the execution that I always feel that we are so far behind of what I want it to be. So it's nice to hear that the outcome, the result still is what we want to get. So that you guys learn how to do things better and how to do things independently. So
yeah.
Sick.
That's
Well,
cool.
thank you for being on, Yami, after all the asking and all the pleading and begging. It's been
The
nice to
crying.
capture you in LA. Thanks so much.
Sweet. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Yami.